Siona God, hello all. Oshta afternoon, good afternoon, and Wado, thank you for watching. Today is day 6 of Transformation of America, the true life story of a CIA mind control slave by Kathy O'Brien with Mark Phillips. We're going to be finishing up chapter 2, and I'm going to read as quickly as I can so that we can get as far as I can for today. Now I felt pure rage for what my country had become during the years after I had bowed out of doing defense work. For once my own mind seemed to be my worst enemy. Hatred for everything consumed me. I loved what my country had once represented to me, but now I was ashamed to be an American. And unbeknownst to me at the moment, soon I would be ashamed of being a male, based on Kathy and Kelly's memories. During the long, usual, boring drive to my secluded house in the wilderness southwest of Nashville, I distinctly recall considering the inherent risks in the formula I was given for stealing 2 slaves from under the coke-filled noses of the CIA. My concerns were not of whether I could do it, but related to my friend's question of, what are you going to do with them? My thoughts went blank as I muttered to myself, life is getting complicated again. I then consoled myself with the old adage of first things first. Within a few days, I had played God and coordinated the move of Kathy and her 8-year-old daughter, Kelly, out of the Houston's house into a nearby apartment. All of this was totally unbeknownst to Houston. As instructed, I deliberately placed the powerful coded suggestions in Kathy's mind. These commands partially bridged her own amnestic, true perceptions that Alex was going to kill her. Little did I know that the message I was provided to block Houston's former control of her was true. Kathy and Kelly seemed to me to be very disoriented and somewhat disconnected from reality. In their new sparsely furnished kitchen, I listened quietly to Kathy excitedly explain that God had sent me to her. She knew this was true because her hands seemed to automatically open her King James Version of the Holy Bible to Psalms chapter 37, verse 37, which proclaims for the literal-minded, mark the perfect man. Not only had I placed this biblical reference by a covert suggestion in her mind while playing God on the phone, but just now in her home moments earlier, I had broken the spine on her Bible so that it would magically open to that page. She said, "See, God did it again for you to see." Using a deprogrammer's language trick, I replied in a reversed response. Well, I'll be damned. You are right. That's the only explanation left that could explain all of this. I was anxious to change the subject so as not to risk alerting any one of her observant personalities to my well-contained laughter. I had been warned that programmed slaves were hyper-observant. In retrospect, I could not have had thoughts of being sacrilegious. I was and remained deeply spiritual, but my early years of researching religions for life's answers had turned me cynical and cold of man's interpretation of the Bible, Quran, and Buddhist teachings. This attitude I privately harbored towards organized religions did nothing to squelch the dread I felt wash over me for that moment. In my attempt to change the subject from religion, I had remembered the Nazi mind control research performed under Himmler's command on the families of Northern European multi-generational Satanists. Christianity, particularly Catholicism, was Himmler's pick of the religion's litter for the targeting chosen ones for his hideous mind control experiments. These chosen ones were to be robotic leaders of Hitler's New World Order. I then asked Kathy what religion she was before she met Houston. She replied, Mormon, but I was a good Catholic before then. My mind swirled from the shocking revelation. I again quickly changed the subject and suggested we go out to dinner and discuss her new job as my assistant starting the following day. But tonight, we would discuss her divorce plans. Later that evening, I began my search for a secure phone to find someone from past associations I knew were CIA connected on an officer's level. I needed a get-well-quick formula or a clean mental health referral who could help these 2 wide-eyed unfortunates. I was informed there were none, and that I knew more about that mind stuff than anyone who would talk. I returned home to find my phone ringing with an anxious Alex Houston, who had returned from a vacation at Boys Town in Nebraska, on the other end exclaiming that he was looking for his wife. She had disappeared. I faked not knowing anything and suggested he come to my house the next afternoon to go over some urgent business. The next morning, I located a lawyer for Kathy, and she had the divorce papers drawn up. That afternoon, I had Granville Ratcliffe, a local sheriff's deputy I partially trusted, who occasionally watched my house when I was out of town, waiting inside my house to witness legally serve Houston with the divorce papers and his termination notice from the company. My last words to Houston, which I recorded on tape, were, "You could get hurt if you mess with me or them. Alex, get out." Now I hope Houston lives to be 100 years of age. Getting the legal jump on Houston to protect Kathy reminded me that I needed to attend my own divorce needs. My wife mutually agreed her life could be more emotionally rewarding without me. She moved to Florida and set up house with our mother. We filed for a non-contested divorce. I agreed to sell the house and what remained of our joint possessions. Still unable to secure expert help for Kathy and Kelly, I maintained their safety by moving them into my house until it was sold. It was during this time that I was approached by a neighbor who said he had seen someone through his binoculars wearing a gun and taking pictures of my house. Other such intrusive visits by unknown persons followed suit. I was getting real nervous. I again called on a CIA operative I knew who worked within Nashville's corrupt law enforcement elite, who days later informed me to get my ass out of there now. Someone wanted me dead. When I asked why, he said, "You know damn good and well why." The house sold quickly, and I had already decided to walk away from my company, my contracts, and the $1 million on deposit as a letter of credit at BCCI in New York. Mr. Yoon came to Nashville. He purchased Houston stock. I returned Mr. Yoon to the airport. My last words to him were, "Farewell, friend." He knew nothing of what was going on, and I never seen or spoken with him again. That afternoon, I cleaned out my office, handed the keys to the landlord, closed out my personal and company bank accounts. I had become angry beyond anything I had ever experienced. In retrospect, this was the birthing process of evolution from man to patriot. I now only wanted answers to what was going on in my government. We needed to be safe while I searched for these answers. My next stop in this pursuit would be Las Vegas, Nevada. Once there, I met with some powerful underworld characters I had befriended back in my aviation days at Capital International Airways, while packaging gambling junkets for these characters. I felt confident that these guys would protect me, at least until I could find out what and who Kathy knew. I was reminded by these men that they were a part of the CIA's new funding operations. One of them flippantly remarked while chomping his Cuban cigar, "You can't hide an egg in a henhouse, fella." My contact then coldly informed me that I had become involved in something that affected our national security. I lied to this wise guy and cryptically responded, "Oh well, I'll take them, Kathy and Kelly, to Alaska and play like a voiceless chameleon." In retrospect, this spontaneous lie must have worked to protect me from red-shirting myself to become the recipient of a CIA mob hit. Kathy and I continued to stay parked in Las Vegas for a few more days, waiting to retrieve Kelly from a last-minute suspected CIA court-ordered visit with her biological father, Wayne Cox. Later, I would learn from Kelly's medical reports that she had spent Christmas vacation in hell. I was now alone in my mind, scared and going broke fast. Once again, I felt totally alienated from everything and everybody in my life. At this moment, I began constantly reminding myself that I was doing the only thing I knew for sure was right. Realistically, I was astride the proverbial tiger, and I could not get off its back and survive. Chapter 3, The Reclamation of Kathy's Mind. The greatest gift anyone can give another is a good memory. It was now the week after Christmas 1988. I was fulfilling half of my pledge to the Vegas mob with all of our remaining personal belongings containerized and securely in transit on a different ship. I, my new family, and pets were ferry bound for Anchorage, Alaska. The 1,600-mile trip through the ice and snow would take about 3 days to complete. Unfortunately, it gave me time to think. Due to our negative cash flow situation, realistically, I knew there was no place to run or hide from the CIA. Kathy and Kelly seemed happy and believed they were safe. This was my number one priority. Excuse me. For me, I had to trust that my escape plan would convince interested CIA personnel that we no longer represented a threat to their security. The plan was based on an ancient psychological warfare formula developed by the Romans. I wanted to portray myself as akin to a character in a bad Reagan Western movie and ride into the sunset, never to be heard from again, thinking to myself that where we were headed geographically, there was no sunset, at least until spring. Late one night, about midway into our voyage, I sought the solitude that the outside forward deck would afford me. I was thankful for the wind-driven sleet and snow that stung and closed my eyes and opened my mind for focused thought. At the time, I was psychologically strung out from a combination of rage and unbearable emotional heartache. To safeguard my precious teenage son, Mason, from being hurt and or unwittingly used as a pawn to force me to remain silent, I had virtually destroyed our father-son bond. I loved and missed him very much and still do. The resultant emotional pain from the deception and separation seemed to be compounding within me and was consuming my being. So we'll stop there until tomorrow. Done the Gohain Kakeiwi and Guchanoske until we meet again. Love you, Mina.